guys, and welcome back. We are so excited to bring you another episode where we are interviewing our arts workers following the COVID-19 pandemic to see how they're doing, what they're up to, what exciting new endeavors they're embarking on, and what challenges they're facing during this time. But before we get started, Alex, I think we have a fun fact. Oh, we have two
Yep,
fun
I
facts.
think we have two, and
Oh,
I'm gonna say the first one, okay?
yeah, take it away.
First fun fact is, did you know that
Mhm.
if Brooklyn, the borough, was its own city, it would be the fourth largest city in the United States?
Oh, come on.
Little old Brooklyn, big old
Brooklyn,
city,
Brooklyn, who'd have
pretty
thunk?
crazy. Who'da thunk?
All right, I have a fun fact for you.
Okay.
Did you know that if you took the entire subway line in New York City, it would take you approximately 24 hours? But if you're me, it takes roughly 48 every time.
So today we will be interviewing Marc Ribot and Phillip Gollub of the Music Workers Alliance, and we are having the pleasure of interviewing them the day after they staged a performance slash protest outside of the governor's New York City residence.
This is a really
So
cool inside look, guys. We're really excited to share this story with you. And of course, we are still
New York.
My name's Phillip Gollub. Originally from Los Angeles. Live in New York now. I'm a pianist and composer and improviser. Uh, Play in lots of different people's bands. Have my own work, and yeah, I've been involved with Music Workers Alliance for about a year now. Uh, as we try to, yeah, like you said, build back better and build really a new organization that can organize freelance and indie sector musicians and DJs. Yeah, I'll pass it to Marc.
My name's Marc Ribot. I'm a guitarist, sometimes composer. I played on a lot of records. MarcRibot.com knows all, and yes, I'm on the steering committee with Phil of the Music Workers Alliance. It's we A number of us started becoming aware before, but it's become very obvious since the beginning of COVID that we need a voice. Indie musicians need a voice, and DJs need a voice in the decisions that affect our lives.
Yeah, so I was reading up on you guys, and it looks like you were formed just at the end of 2019, correct? So just prior to everything that has happened. So I'm sure you had a mission prior to COVID, but I also imagine that stuff has changed drastically, obviously for performers and people within the industry. Can you elaborate on that?
This didn't come really out of nowhere. There have been, for the last for the last over 20 years, there have been a number of indie musicians have tried to get together a number of times and succeeded sometimes in getting together to. We won contract fare minimums at the Winter Jazz Festival. Before that, at Knitting Factory Jazz Festivals, and a number of other things. So we've been trying to make things right for quite some time. Before this, there was the Indie Musicians Caucus at Local 802, which was like a bunch of musicians who were also union members, but who were not work in the traditional Broadway and symphonic scene, but were playing indie clubs and touring. So we wanted to get something together that represented us. And anyways, make a long story short, we wound up um, uh, meeting Olympia Kazu from uh, from the New York City Artists Coalition, and a couple of other people that she'd been working with, DJs and musicians, and then we decided to form this specific thing. Uh, that's what that's how this began.
I'll maybe just add that I wasn't involved at that point actually, but it all changed when COVID hit um, because mass meetings started to be held because people were energized, there was a need. And that's about the time when I got involved. And that's when I think the character of the organization really changed to be about something where we bring in as many musicians and DJs as we can and center their demands and take action around those things and really have that kind of model of an organization. I can't speak much to what it was before that, but I think COVID immediately brought 60, 70 people onto a Zoom where we could start to talk about things and build from there. And we still have those kinds of numbers on our general meetings.
In terms of Zoom and kind of going off that point, have you seen that musicians are kind of adapting to this new virtual environment? And if so, how are they adapting to this virtual environment? And is there room to make revenue off of that virtual environment, or has it proven really difficult and challenging?
Well, okay, I'll jump in on this one. First of all, yeah, we're all meeting by Zoom. It's driving us all crazy, but making a lot of things possible. And we'll probably continue to do so after COVID. It's going to be a long time before they'll be able to drag me midtown for another meeting again. That said, we have a serious problem in terms of monetizing online because, my brother's a teacher and he's teaching online, and he's not so happy to be sitting in front of the screen all day, but he's getting a check every week. We have not been able to transition online for the simple reason that our work online is in competition with work that is accessible for zero. Anybody who wants to see hear Marc Ribot's work online, anybody who can type my name into a search engine can get my work for free. And you don't have to be have a doctorate in economics to understand that it's very, very hard to sell what anyone can get for free. This is not, a lot of people think, oh, well, that's just the nature of online. But in fact, it isn't the nature online. Like I say, there's a number of professions that have been able to work and monetize online. The reason for that situation isn't the technology itself. The technology is great. We love the technology. It's beautiful. The reason for that is a little known law called Section 512 of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which gives online corporations a special privilege. It gives them the privilege to host illegal behavior. In other words, as long as YouTube is not itself posting my material without my consent and without paying me, then they cannot be sued for damages, no matter how much their business model actually encourages that, and no matter how many billions of dollars they make from that in ad-based and data mining profits, and no matter how badly we are hurt by that. So that has been that is something that has been harmful for a long time, but with COVID, it's been more than harmful. We are 70% unemployed. That's double the rate of the Great Depression. And it is really hurting to not be able to make money doing our work online.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you're kind of speaking to the broader issue of the music industry in general, right? These issues existed before COVID, right? And you're speaking all about people streaming stuff illegally, but from what I understand in the music industry, even the legal setup they have for streaming revenue, very little of it ends up getting to the artist, right? You'll hear about pop acts getting hundreds of millions of streams and they end up with a few $1,000s for that. And I guess they were mostly relying on touring revenue, and since COVID, that's non-existent. So therein lies the issue.
Yes, I think that's a very good point. I think that's a very good point. But in terms of what can be done about that, I think there are two. First of all, it's a complex situation. Yes, there is definitely exploitation by, for example, the major labels. There's definitely exploitation by Spotify. There's exploitation all the way down the line, but the difference between the difference between what's happening with copyright infringement, with the mass infringement of copyright that is caused by this special privilege, safe harbor, they call it, legal protection for mass infringing corporations. The difference between that and the major label and Spotify exploitation is that the major label and Spotify exploitation is all something I agreed to. In other words, if a major label is ripping me off, it's because I signed a contract that allowed them to. If Spotify and that contract allowed them to market my work on Spotify, I didn't have to sign that contract. I have some choice in that, and so I can use that choice to better my situation. But the difference between that and mass copyright infringement is that I don't have a choice in that.
Right.
And so that brings, I think that all the things that you mentioned are things that must be dealt with and should be dealt with. But we need to deal with the mass infringement first, because that brings down the whole market. If we fix that, then watch the rates go up. They're going to go up fast at Spotify. But right now, even Spotify can't compete with zero.
Sure.
Governor Cuomo has announced support for artists through these pop-up shows throughout New York. So what do you both think of NY Pops Up? What do you think of this program, and has it helped music workers? And if not, how has it affected them?
So, I mean, I'll just sort of try to speak to what this has felt like. This has felt to us like a slap in the face. There's really no other way of putting it. This is looked at with widespread scorn by your average working class musician and artist. This is a PR effort by the governor to tell, the media and his donor class that he's bringing arts and culture back to New York because that's the driver of the economy for New York. But it does not bring any gigs back to working musicians, and it certainly doesn't bring any paying gigs back to working musicians. I don't know anybody who's benefited from this program, and I don't expect to know anybody who will benefit from this program. And if we're talking about safe reopening, I would suspect that you would want to do that not with folks not with the type of names that sell out Madison Square Garden. So it's kind of a joke, to be honest. We've been using this issue only to pivot to what we think is a real solution, which is to have public funding of actual direct funding for arts and culture workers to create work and to do performances in a safe way, in an online way, after the pandemic as well, because we know when the pandemic is over, our industry is not going to. It's going to be a long time before it's back to where it needs to be. Venues are hurting, and we need subsidies for our artist fees, for our jobs. And so that's why we've been saying invest in our New York and fund a WPA program. This program of the governor is a joke, and it really amounts to nothing but PR.
Yeah, I'd like to underline what Phil just said. It doesn't even, okay, in the New York City area alone, we're talking 50 to 80,000 musicians alone, okay? Not including other areas of the arts, dancers, theater people, okay? And that's just the New York City area. So to have a few hundred name artists who, look, much respect to them. People are hurting at all levels, of the industry, and they deserve the work. But to have a few hundred name artists do these pop-up things, this is hype. Doesn't deserve to be called a Band-Aid. What Phil just said, and we need to underline as many times as possible, is again, unemployment at the height of the Great Depression was 35 to 40%. Among performers now, among music workers now, our figures are that it's above 70%, because we polled our members and the people around us. The New York Times listed it the day before yesterday at over 60%. We're talking almost twice the figures in the Great Depression. This needs the kind of bold and this needs real needs real programs to deal with this, not scratch the surface shows of public support. It needs real public support, like in the Great Depression, the WPA, Roosevelt. The WPA was a work progress administration. They didn't say, let's put on a few shows with a few stars. They said, let's give people jobs, not only musicians, by the way, but all the people who have been thrown out of work by COVID, the people who have been shut down by COVID. And I need to add that we haven't been literally shut down by COVID itself. We've been shut down by government policies. Now, these were necessary policies in many cases, okay? We support safe reopening, and we support whatever public health measures are necessary. We don't want to get sick. We don't want our audiences to get sick. We care about this as much as or more than anyone. But if we're going to be taking one for the team, then let's make sure that everyone is chipping in to make sure that we are not evicted, that people are not being evicted from their homes. And the WPA that Phil mentioned is a way to do that, which isn't just a handout. It involves jobs with dignity. It involves getting actors and musicians to give something back to the community, to give to do something productive, to do what we're trained to do.
Yeah, if I could just underline that the philosophy behind the original WPA, Federal Project Number 1, which is what created all the arts funding, was that there's dignity in doing the work you're trained to do. That yes, there's public value in an infrastructure project, in building a dam or doing a staircase that you might see to this day on a trail that was built by the WPA, building a bridge that's still standing today from the WPA. There's lasting public value, but there's also dignity in having it's not right to say to a world-class violinist to go work on that bridge. What's the point of that? There's dignity in having that person do what they're trained to do and create lasting value in the community doing that work. And that was the idea behind it. And I just want to add that, there's a lot of it's a hot political issue right now in New York about raising taxes on the wealthiest New Yorkers and wealthiest corporations in New York. And Cuomo keeps saying we can't do that because the rich will leave. Well, the truth is the rich have already left New York in this past year, because the richest New Yorkers decide to live in New York because of its arts and culture, because it's the greatest art city in the world. That's why they live here, and that's why they've all left already. That's why the real estate market has already gone down in New York. If we want to bring the wealthiest New Yorkers back to New York, we need to fund artists to create work again, to bring them back.
That's a great point. Are there specifics you could get into about you said WPA, what that could look like, what kind of services it would be offering?
You want to speak to that, Mark?
Well, this has not yet been planned in detail, but I was certainly imagining that that teaching could be part of it, that producing online events, but in which people got paid, could be part of it. That I could imagine that performances one of the great things about the original WPA was that it wasn't just, hey, let's put on the usual shows just for the usual people in the usual places. The WPA brought live music and live theater all over the country. So in every borough, in every part of every state where people normally couldn't might never see a live theater or live music performance, people got exposed to it, and it really, and also need to add that the WPA, especially in the theater program, check out the Federal Theater Project. They were way ahead of their time in terms of being not just liberal, but really anti-racist. they did wonderful things with a black theater and dance company, and the way they involved black actors, directors, and writers in the planning of the project. The people who became involved in the WPA became the next great generation of directors, actors, um, and 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 um, and people who were at every level of performance. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential. I mean, as far as MWA is concerned, you know, the past is going to be our guide. Is a great There's some great lessons in the past for what this should be.
Wow. Yeah, I wasn't even aware of that past, so that's definitely something I would love to learn more about.
Oh, one little footnote is that at yesterday's demonstration, we read a letter from our friends in the Artists' Rights Alliance, who are a rank, you know, a musicians group that sticks up for artists' rights online. And one of the signers was Rosanne Cash, you know, the singer Rosanne Cash,
Wow.
whose father is was Johnny, is the late Johnny Cash, and not a lot of people know this. But Johnny Cash grew up on a New Deal farm in
Oh,
Arkansas. So these programs affected people all over.
Wow.
wow, that's incredible. Speaking to your protest yesterday outside of Cuomo's Midtown office, what was the main message that you hope to convey through this performance and protest, and how do you feel that it went, and do you feel that it was well received?
Well, I think the main message that we wanted to convey is that arts workers are workers. We're here. We exist. We're hurting. We want to work. We have joy to offer. We have, um, we have soothing to offer to the community through our art making, and I hope we put that on display yesterday. And we need jobs. We need gigs, and our industry is in tatters, and we need it's the most affected industry by COVID-19, and we need the government to subsidize our jobs. And we need to tax the rich to fund that. That was our message, and I think we delivered it loud and clear. And I hope that I actually couldn't be there, unfortunately, but I was watching it on Instagram Live, and even just through my phone's screen, I could feel it. And I'll let Mark speak to it since he was actually there, but I hope that was really communicated yesterday.
Well, we communicated all the things that Phil just said, and we also communicated something else, that musicians' demonstrations are the best party. We kept it safe. We kept bell covers on the horns. I was one of the marshals, so I was, making sure everybody kept their mask on and nobody was like doing anything risky, because like I said, we're committed. We're committed to safety. But yes, those were the messages. The message. What Phil said that's most important is we exist. We exist. We need to be heard, because we know that, okay, well, I'll just say it plainly that I think that a lot of policy in this has been shaped, a lot of state and city policy has been shaped by those with the most powerful lobbyists, not simply science. Sound waves do not transmit COVID-19, okay? We may not have as great a lobbyist as the restaurant industry. We may not be as present in the councils of government as the people who own the major stadiums, and largest theaters, but we are an important part of the creative process, and there's a lot of us.
And speaking to that, were the people participating in the protest mainly made up of members of the MWA, or were there other musicians involved? Who was there?
Phil, you can speak to the groups that were involved. It was
Yeah.
about two-thirds MWA people.
A lot of MWA folks were there, a lot of core members, a lot of new members who turned out. We also were working in coalition with a number of organizations on this action. So We had a lot of dancers there from a worker center called the Dance Artist National Collective. We had theater makers there from the League of Independent Theaters. Dance NYC, which is an advocacy group, was supporting. Creative New Futures, which is a group of choreographers, was there. The Union of Musicians and Allied Workers was supporting us. And I'm probably forgetting others, but we had a number of organizations there, as well as New York City Democratic Socialists of America were helping support the event as well, just more broadly. And then, yeah, the entire Invest in Our New York coalition was also the co-host of the event. So it was a broad event, and I think it's important that we, in this campaign, keep the focus. It's broader than music workers. It's all arts and culture workers, and our voice is stronger in coalition.
We can't forget that we got wonderful support from the Jazz Foundation of America, who Steve Jordan, wonderful drummer who's on their board, and the actor Jeffrey Wright sent a statement of support.
Wow, that is so fantastic to hear. And I think that, it's so beautiful to see all of these different artists coming together and supporting one another. And that, at least as somebody who has been in the arts for a while, that has always been my experience, is that, even through, whether it be through challenges or triumphs, the arts community is so intertwined and so strong, even through adverse times like these.
I want to quickly add that, we forgot to mention elected officials who came out to support State Senator Jessica Ramos, who's been one of our closest allies and supporters, Assemblymember Harvey Epstein, and also State Senator Jabari Brisport, who I want to particularly shout out because he began his career as an actor and a member of Actors Equity. And I, just what you just said, he also said at the end of his speech that, artists support artists. And it was really beautiful to hear him say that. So Cuomo has his billionaire donors, we have each other.
Yes, and it is so beautiful to see that we all so badly want the show to go on, right? No matter whether we're the dancers or actors or musicians, we all so badly want to bring that light back to New York. I think in summation, our last question for you will be, if you could give one message to our young artists out there during this time who are practicing their crafts, who are quarantining, or who are struggling during this time, what would your one message to those artists be?
Well, I'll make this a very quick one. One is, don't lose hope, stay safe, keep practicing. But when we practice, okay, we got to practice our instruments, and then we got to practice with our bands. But in order to make the whole thing work, we got to practice with our organizations beyond that. And we got to get voice in how the system is run. Because without that, our bands and our individual practice is just going to be spinning our wheels. We got to get together. We need unity.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I am a young artist, so I don't know if I'm qualified to give a message to young artists. But I would say that we are not independent. It's a word we often use to describe ourselves. We're unorganized right now. Independent is a polite word, a polite way of saying unorganized. And we need to get organized. We've been organized in the past. We know that organizing works. So join an organization, whether it's MWA, whether it's DANK if you're a dancer, whatever it is, get involved in around the issues that affect you and those in your community. Do it in collaboration with others and start to make a change. It's up to us.
Beautiful. Well, thank you both so much for joining us today. We're so appreciative to have had this interview with you both, and thank you for sharing your thoughts.